Hi, this is Jade Carney. This is my final exhibition project on the negative effects of closed adoption records. If you are grading this, you may take notes to use after the presentation. Older may mean better when being applied to wine, but not necessarily when being applied to laws. Closed adoption laws have been around for a long time, but just because they've been around for over 70 years doesn't necessarily mean that they are in the best interests of the adoptee. So, what exactly is adoption? There are many different ways in which children can get adopted. They can be domestically adopted, which means they are adopted, like the children are adopted in the same country that the adoptive parents live in. They could be internationally adopted, which means that the child is born in another country and is brought back to another country to live with the adoptive family. And another very common adoption is a step-parent adoption, where after a parent remarries, after a divorce or a death of a parent, the stepmother or stepfather can adopt the child and become a legal guardian. There are two major types of adoption: open and closed. The next slide is a video I got from YouTube. It explains the difference between open and closed adoption.
There are two types of adoption: open and closed adoption. With an open adoption, birth parents and adoptive parents have greater control over the adopting process. At the same time, the child may want to establish a relationship with their birth parents. This can usually make adoptive parents feel their role as parents is being threatened. In a closed adoption, adoptive parents usually feel more secure in their role as parents. However, some children may feel unwanted or rejected by their birth parents. This can lead to severe emotional problems.
There are pros and cons to both open and closed adoptions. This first chart is for pros to open and closed adoption. Since my project mostly focuses on the adoptee rather than the birth family or the adoptive family, these will be pros and cons for the adoptee. This second chart is cons to open and closed adoption from the adoptee's point of view. Curiosity is a natural human instinct. This is why most adopted children wonder about their birth family. This curiosity is intensified with closed adoption. Some adopted children actually choose to go search for their birth family through agencies or groups, but some adoptees who choose to search for their birth parents wait until their adoptive parents have died because they don't want to seem ungrateful towards their adoptive family and in fear of giving off the effect that they weren't good parents or they didn't like them. This cartoon shows how with closed adoptions, some adoptive parents may feel rejected or in love if the child decides to search for their birth parents. How have closed adoption record laws negatively impacted adoptees? Closed adoption records have had several negative psychological effects on adoptees. Some of them include depression, anxiety, and self-esteem problems. Would open adoption record laws improve adoptees' emotional health? Easily accessible open adoption records would definitely improve the emotional health of the adoptees. Okay, I am now going to give you the background of adoption in the U.S. concerning the history and why adoption records were sealed. Adoption has been occurring for a long time, but it was officially recognized in 1851 when the first official document concerning adoption was approved. This is a picture of George S. Betwell. He was the governor of Massachusetts in 1851. He approved the Massachusetts Adoption of Children Act on May 24, 1851. It was the first official document to give the adoptee, the adoptive parents, and the birth parents rights. For example, if the birth parent was still alive when the child was getting adopted, the birth parent would have to give consent for the child to be adopted. And if the child getting adopted was over 14, the child would be asked for consent before the adoption was finalized. The records were closed to protect the three parts of the triad: the adoptee, the birth family, and the adoptive family. It was supposed to protect the birth family from the child coming back into their lives and perhaps hurting a reputation if no one knew that the birth mother was pregnant. The child coming back would also be viewed as a disgrace if the birth mother had the child when she was unwed and/or young. Some young and unwed mothers may have even been forced to give up their child for adoption. The three parts of the triad are all connected. They can be connected in different ways, but there is a connection. For example, the adoptee will always be connected to the birth family because they are the birth family's biological child. Even if they don't really know each other, there is still that strong connection. We are going to move on to the next section, the damage of closed adoption records. The damage can be emotional and sometimes even a hazard to physical health. This is a video of Annette Baran. She will explain how open adoption would benefit the child emotionally and mentally.
The value of openness, is that the things that beset a child in a closed, anonymous adoption, the feelings of abandonment, the feelings of worthlessness, the child saying, there must be something wrong with me and that's why I was dumped, don't have to be there. Because the child then can say, okay, they care about me even if they couldn't care for me.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the most common emotional problems with adoptees. So this first picture is anxiety. Anxiety is very common, especially in children that were adopted when they were older. This is because there isn't enough stability in their life and they don't know what they can and cannot depend on. There are also trust issues that are also with stability because they don't know who and who they can't trust, which is the second picture. Picture in the bottom left, yes, the bottom left of the screen shows how many adoptees when they are adolescents have trouble developing their identity because they do not know who their birth parents are and they feel like a part of them is missing. The last picture is a girl with all of these negative, comments about her. So that is supposed to represent low self-esteem. Many adoptees have low self-esteem because they don't always know why they were relinquished for adoption, so they may wonder if something was wrong with them or why they were not wanted.